Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, a very poor woodcutter lived in a tiny cottage in the forest with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. His second wife often ill-treated the children and was forever nagging the woodcutter.
There are not enough food in the house for us all. There are too many mouths to feed. We must get rid of the two brands,
she declared, and she kept on trying to persuade the woodcutter to abandon his children in the forest.
Take their mouths from home, so far that they can never find the way back. Maybe someone will find them and give them a home.
The downcast woodcutter didn't know what to do. Hansel, who one evening had overheard his parents' conversation, and so as Gretel too. Then Gretel started to cry. But Hansel comforted her. "Don't worry, if they do leave us in the forest, we'll find a way back home," he said. Gretel realized and smiled. In the midnight, Hansel is sleeping out in the house, and he filled his pocket with little white pebbles. Then he went back to bed. In the next morning, the second wife talked to Hansel and Gretel.
"Let's go, kids. We will chop some wood,"
she said sweetly. Hansel and Gretel agreed. While walking to the forest to chop some wood, Hansel is dropping the white pebbles he collected last night one by one, so that they can find their way back home. The second wife noticed that Hansel was walking slowly.
"Hansel, why are you walking so slow? Come along,"
she said sweetly. Then Hansel smiled and walked faster.
"Yes, mother, I'll be there,"
he said. When they arrived deep in the forest, the woodcutter told the kids to gather up some wood to make a fire. When they made the fire, the woodcutter and the second wife stand up and said,
"Stay here, we will chop some wood,"
she said sweetly. Hansel and Gretel sat next by the fire, and to pass the time, they sing a lullaby. When the time passes, they fell asleep. Gretel woke up and saw nothing because of the dark. Then she cried. But Hansel comforted her. "Don't worry, we'll find a way back home," he said, and they started to walk, and they followed the white pebbles that he dropped earlier. When they got back home, the woodcutter was very happy to see his children again. "Oh, my children!" he said joyfully. Then he fed Hansel and Gretel a meal, but the second wife still wanted to get rid of the children. So she persuaded the woodcutter to bring the children deeper in the forest. In the next day, she gave Hansel and Gretel a bread. "Here is your supper," she said sweetly, and they started to walk. But this time, Hansel did not bring any white pebbles, so he crammed the crusts of his bread, then dropped them. But when morning came, they can't find any crumbs because the birds ate them and lost their way back home. Hours of walking, they saw a beautiful tree and sit down. They saw a beautiful bird and it made them smile. The bird flew away and they followed it. Suddenly, Hansel and Gretel came upon a little cottage. The cottage was made of candy. The roof is biscuit, the window is sugar, and to plants her ice cream. Because of the hunger they have, they ate the ice cream. While eating, a lovely old woman came out from the door and said, "Come inside, have a proper meal," she said sweetly. Then Hansel and Gretel came inside. She gave them a lot of food and giving them a big glass of milk. "Eat up, don't be shy," she said. When Hansel and Gretel finished their food, Hansel asked for help. "Can you help us find our way back home?" he said. And the old woman responded, "No, he will stay here forever." The old woman turned out as a witch. Hansel and Gretel got scared and they ran to the door. But the witch locked them and laughed. She put Hansel on a cage while she made Gretel do all the chores. The witch made Gretel feed his brother to become fatter so that she can eat Hansel. "Feed your brother, young lady," and laugh. The witch checked on Hansel every day if he gets fatter. "Stretch your hands, boy, so that I can see if you're fat enough," she said. The witch had very bad eyesight, so instead of holding out his hands, Hansel held out a little bone of his food that he ate. He never seemed to be fatter. After a few weeks passed, the witch became angry. "Enough!" she cried. "Gretel, draw the water and boil the pot. Be he fat or be he thin, tomorrow I will have a feast on him," and laughed. Gretel cried and begged, but the witch had no mercy. In the next day, the witch said to Gretel, "While the pot is boiling, we must do the baking and heat the oven." Pushing Gretel to the oven and said, "Climb in and see if the oven is hot enough to break the bread." Gretel already knew what the witch had in her mind, so she said, "I don't know how to climb. Can you show me how?" "Silly girl!" the witch cried. The witch climbed in the oven, and that moment, Gretel climbed in and pushed the witch and slammed the door shut. Gretel jumped with joy. "Yay! I am free and let my brother out this candy," she said joyfully. Gretel rushed to the cage to open the door to let Hansel out. They hugged each other for joy. The kids went through the witch's house and found some gold and jewelry, and filling their pockets in. Their father rushed to the cottage. "My children, I've been searching for all of you. I came here to take you home again," he cried. Then the woodcutter told the kids that their stepmother had gone away to join the other witches. The kids were happy to hear the news. Then they walked back home full of gold in their pockets and food in their table, without getting hungry anymore, and they lived happily ever after. The end.